Greetings, everyone. GleeCon back at you again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last one, we took Nesting Wary out for a spin in World of Warcraft Classic, and we got close to wrapping up Loch Modan. I think we're going to need to do one more level, but now that we've switched servers over to a non-hardcore server, at least we can easily group up. So we've got maybe one or two quests to do and then a couple hard elite ones. So it's basically going to take a squad that's similar to a dungeon squad, but we'll knock it out. And it's pretty good. It was a successful mission, no deaths, did some tough content, switched over from a kitty cat to a buzzard, because who wouldn't rather have a vulture as a pet? We've also been reading all of the World of Warcraft. First, the Warcraft Dungeons and Dragons setting books, and then the revamped versions of all of them, the World of Warcraft Dungeons and Dragons setting. And there are a ton of these books. We've been doing it for months now, and we're almost done. We have 3 books to go. We just finished the Horde Player's Guide by looking at some adventures. So stay a while and listen as we kick off the third from the last. We have 2 more after this. This is the Alliance Player's Guide. It is as you would expect it to be, the kind of companion, similar, parallel book to the Horde Player's Guide. This is going to, I'm guessing, be just like the other one, but from that Alliance perspective. So I'm thinking we're going to have some parallels between all of them. So if you look, there's 10 chapters. There are 4 new races that we're going to cover today, plus the introduction. Not going to be too long. If you remember, then one of the long chapters we read was class options might be short, might be long. Prestige classes took us a long time, I believe, last time. Magic is okay. It should be medium. Technology should be okay. These are all going to be one-shots. And then we're going to have a big chunk of the book with history and culture, the Alliance history and the current situation. All of those, that's what's going to slow us down, but it's also the best part of these books. And then we'll finish it up with military forces, a little bestiary creatures, and a couple adventures. So cool. All right, so let's read the introduction quickly. Welcome to the Alliance Player's Guide. Excuse me. It says, since you're reading this book, you're probably playing a character who's a member of the Alliance, which is great because that's what this book's about. We do both. We're equal. We have no favoritism between Alliance and the Horde. However, this book contains plenty of information useful for Horde characters and independents as well, from feats to prestige classes to inside information on the Alliance's workings. Within these pages, behold the following chapters. You can tell at different times of day, too. The last chapter I went over an hour without a single click from the dog, and that's because I did it at doggy nap time. And now I try to squeeze in a later video after dinner, and this is energetic time. So I am working on remodeling some areas. I've been doing it all week. That's partly why I had promised more episodes and I didn't quite get there. I've been putting a lot of time to revamping some of the bedrooms on the back half of the house. And my expectation is we should be able to make some changes soon. So just like we talked about fresh meat, we have the new races. We're not even going to, whatever. We already went through all these. But be all that you can be in the Alliance. We also have your might cannot be matched. All is mana. Click, click, boom. That's like a freaking 90s Prodigy song or something like that. That they're fiction spots. So we'll have the vignettes that we read throughout. Cool. Warcraft on the web. We looked that up. It no longer exists. It's a Vampire the Masquerade defunct website at that now. So it is written, State of the Alliance, Uncle Lothar wants you. They really are making these thinly, not thinly veiled, but just not very well crafted, like puns. Alliance Bestiary walking the walk. That's kind of why I'm ready to be moving on. I was just talking with my son about why I'm ready to be done with these books. We have these nugs, like chapters 6 and 7 are going to be pretty, I expect that we'll learn a lot if we did anything like the last time. But geez, there's just, the writing is not up to the par of some of the professional writers that we've read. And the lore is light, rehashed, and only sometimes the coolest stuff is only kind of canon. All right, the Alliance and Horde Compendium. It says, some of you remember that. Well, we broke it up into 2 books to make more money. Ding. That's basically what's happening here. It says that entire book was 120 pages. These are each 240. So they took 120 pages and changed it into about 500 pages. Okay. And here we go with the fresh meat. We're going to read chapter 1 as well, new races. This chapter introduces 3 new playable races, Wildhammer Dwarves, Furbolgs, and Half-Elves. And we're going to read about all of them. So, Wildhammer Dwarf, let's read about that, at least the description. Wildhammer Dwarves are feral and untamed, prone to revelry, shamanism, and daring acts of bravery and stupidity. I still think they should give us the chance to play them. Why not? They eschew technological gadgets in favor of nature magic and straightforward weapons, including their famous storm hammers. Wildhammer Dwarves are famous across Azeroth for their unique relationship with griffins. They treat these noble creatures as equals rather than mounts or pets. The griffins respond to their handlers' respect and are steadfast and resolute in return. This close relationship produces the most famous Wildhammer Dwarves, the Griffin Riders, heroes of the Second and Third Wars. Wildhammer Dwarves are fearless warriors and unswerving opponents of evil. They take to the skies astride griffins to combat vile creatures such as harpies and black drakes and unnatural contraptions like goblin zeppelins. Slightly xenophobic Wildhammers are content to deal almost exclusively with griffins and nature spirits. They're distant, even distrustful toward members of other races. Despite their insular nature, Wildhammer Dwarves do not hesitate to come to the aid of their allies when the need arises. The fanatical archaeological fervor that has seized the Ironforged Dwarves does not fall upon the Wildhammers. Perhaps they're descended from these mysterious titans, but does that matter? They have to be descended from them. Wildhammer Dwarves live in the present and do not dwell in the past. Their ambivalence about their Titan ancestry denies them the power that their Ironforged brethren have discovered, but the Wildhammers make up for it with bravery, determination, and wild spirits. Okay? So they look like Ironforged Dwarves, but they're a little taller and leaner. They have more exposure to the sun and high winds, which toughens them up. And they like to put kind of like tribal stuff, beads and things like good luck charms. They're found in Airy Peak and the hinterlands, so right up against the areas that are touched by the Horde. And many have traveled with Jaina to help out against the Horde on Kalimdor. But they don't hang around Theramore, they fly around. They're technically neutral because they're not technically part of the Alliance. That's true. But if they had to choose, they would pick the Alliance to help out. They are appalled that the Blood Elves defected over to the Horde. So in this, obviously, they're being considered as Alliance in this manual. And I don't know, in the Twilight Hinterlands, if the quest lines that you help them are Alliance only. That would be, interesting. They don't like goblins. They'll beat them down. They have ties to nature and storms like druids do, and also I'd say closer to shamans than druids because they don't turn into like animal forms, but maybe they could. And they have a lot of the naming conventions of the Ironforge, and they kind of give them there. And here's some of their stat blocks. They are strong against poison. They get to throw weapons. They're good about handle animal. I mean, I think there would be some cool things here if we wanted to make them an in-game class. And we got some stat blocks right there. If you wanted to take racial classes in Wildhammer Dwarf, anything else? They're reckless, so they kind of have that barbarianism that they can lean into. They get a bonus weapon proficiency for throwing hammers. Makes sense. Okay, second race is the new Furbolg race, which again would be another great race. Why not? A shamanistic race of humanoid bears, Furbolgs have lived peacefully on Kalimdor Northrend for millennia. They make their homes in secluded glades and wilderness idylls. Many live in Ashenvale Forest and are friends of the Night Elves. Furbolgs are physically powerful but somewhat lacking in mental prowess. Since the Third War, demonic influence has corrupted many Furbolgs. Now Furbolgs have a reputation as dangerous and feral creatures. Uncorrupted Furbolgs find it easiest to distance themselves from other races because members of both the Alliance and the Horde take it on faith that all Furbolgs are evil and must be destroyed. Despite this fact, uncorrupted Furbolgs remain allies of the Night Elves and by association humans, dwarves, and gnomes as well. They are not members of the Alliance per se, but are certainly friends of it. Uncorrupted Furbolgs look sadly at their corrupted brethren, and if they make friends with members of the other races, seek help clearing tainted Furbolgs from the land or discovering ways to heal them. Furbolg society is organized into tribes, and an elder shaman leads every Furbolg tribe. Shaman act as leaders both in war and in spiritual matters, consulting with forest spirits to provide leadership and guidance to their tribes. Furbolgs respect their shaman and have an intimate relationship with nature. Unlike many other intelligent races, Furbolgs feel that they are part of nature. It's not something outside, not some outside force to tame, exploit, or revere. Furbolg trackers are also important members of Furbolg society. They, along with younger shaman, move through their tribe's domain, marking game trails and keeping track of migrations. Furbolgs are hunters, moving in predictable patterns as their prey travels with the seasons. Furbolgs also forage. They can eat almost anything, but they have a particular fondness for berries. All right now I'm telling you, here's what we need to do. We need to make Horde Ogre race playable and Furbolgs for the Alliance. So Blizzard, any of you guys, if there's some weird rando Blizzard guy out there or girl listening to this, make it happen. Pull some strings. I don't know why it's not. Why are you giving us Drakthir Evokers? Something no one wants or needs. I did not need the Drakthir. This storyline that we're inhabiting right now could absolutely just as easily have been done without the Drakthir. And certainly without making them a playable race. I don't care. I don't. I like this expansion. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, why? Why'd you waste my time? I also did not need Evoker class. I didn't need that. You don't have to give me that. Or if you can, why are we making another Evoker's Drakthir specific class? Just don't give me something that I don't want or don't need. Give us something that I want. Or hey, make Naga and Centaur. Let's do the Naga and the Centaur. How about that? I'll take that as a second. Okay, Furbolgs naturally have a peaceful society and avoid combat. A Furbolg who must fight is terrifying to behold, and most intelligent creatures take steps to make sure that Furbolgs in the area remain happy and content. Strong Furbolg warriors are proud to face their enemies and prey with only their claws. Other Furbolgs use primitive weapons such as spears, often decorated with feathers. Some Furbolgs live in isolated villages, others in burrow-like tunnel systems, some of which are complex and extensive. Hunting Furbolgs erect small temporary villages which are composed of a single log building in the center with less permanent structures surrounding it. Furbolgs rarely venture from their secluded homes, though a few of them seek the companionship of other races and thrill to the prospect of adventure and travel. They desire to see the world beyond their tiny forest homes. Furbolgs have their own language, Earth Sign, and a few speak Darnassian. For the love of goodness, Sora. Okay. Before we get to the Furbolg, well, actually, let's finish out this part. They look like bears, which means they could also basically very lightly modify the Pandaria, Pandarin-like template that they're using for their engine to create Furbolgs. He's bringing me a toy. They have bipedal gait, dexterous hands, the ability to speak. They dress in loincloths, togas. They can look basically like any bear color, including white, like polar Furbolgs. We've seen them from ever since Classic. They live everywhere. Ashenvale, Kalimdor, Grizzlemall, Grizzly Hills, and Northrend. We see the Winterpole ones living in... They're everywhere. They're independent, but they're friends of the Night Elves, and they're tied to nature. They're shaman or druids. That would be cool, too. They don't have regular priests. All right, let's read the flavor text. Ragno socked the Furbolg in the crotch, then dived to the side. Dove. The great bear creature growled. As Ragno hit the ground and rolled, he heard a thump. Perhaps the Furbolg dropped its spear, or itself. Ragno grinned as he snatched his fallen battle hammer and got his feet under him. He leaped up, spinning to face the Furbolg again. It was a foot away. Ragno was staring into an immense wall of fur-covered muscle. Damn. Ragno had time to think about pulling his hammer back for a strike before the Furbolg cuffed him in the head. His hammer fell to the ground. Stars and black spots did a reel in his vision. Ragno felt sick. He felt sicker as two great paws grabbed him under the armpits and lifted him up. Ragno's vision cleared as he came face to face with the Furbolg. He squinted at it. Damn, but ain't you an ugly piece of work? He grinned, showing the Furbolg several gold teeth, several silver teeth, one or two dark iron teeth, and even a couple of teeth still made out of tooth. The Furbolg shouted something in its bear growl, and its hot breath blew back Ragno's hair and beard. Its breath smelled of rotten animal. I tell you, lad. Rogno cut off as the Furbolg shook him. Metallic teeth clicked together. Then the Furbolg reared back and heaved Rogno 20 feet. The world blurred into a tree. Ragnar heard a crack. He hoped it was the tree and not his head. Bloody bears, he muttered after he hit the ground. It's no wonder people hunt the buggers. Okay, I take it back. I said the writing is not up to par, but in the first actual narrative, we managed to, in the first sentence of this book, work in the word crotch. So I mean that's A+ writing right there. Okay, so we get some Furbolg racial traits, Furbolg levels. What do they get? They like to be barbarians. Heck, I feel like that's their go-to in this. They have improved claws. They have an increase in size, so they're big boys or girls. All right, that's not a lot. They don't give us a lot there. They have natural weapons. Okay, half-elves. Humans and high elves can produce offspring, and the product of such a union is a half-elf. Why not night elves too? High elves are not prolific, especially after Quel'Thas's decimation, and they do not look favorably upon those who couple with other races. As such, half-elves are rare. History reveals certain prejudices against half-elves. Humans are jealous of the half-elves' extended lifespans. Night elves are suspicious of their high elf heritage. High elves see them as proof of their race's weakening blood. In recent years, this bias has waned. Wars and strife show how petty such prejudices are. In large cities, which consider themselves enlightened, half-elves find little of the historic discrimination. Still, many individuals, particularly high elves, remain scornful of half-elves and may or may not attempt to hide their hard feelings. Tensions with the Horde and other forces strain relationships among all races, and some allow this stress to manifest itself in anger against anything different from themselves. Sidebar, is this Bran speaking? We have not had any indication yet that this is another book from Bran's perspective. Maybe that will happen in those later chapters. Okay, so they have this builds of slight humans or heavy high elves, fair skin, fair hair, brilliant light eyes, but they're not as long lived as elves, but they still live longer than humans. They can basically, it says they're normally located in Theramore, well on Kalimdor. They can also be in any alliance place set up in Lordaeron. The Ghostlands of Quel'Thalas, so that's a big sign that this book, and we already know it is written. We're now firmly in material that's happening after the Burning Crusade, and these next two books are happening throughout Burning Crusade expansion and bumping right up to Wrath of the Lich King. So we're actually, like, from a writing standpoint, we're getting further than where we are, but that's okay, because for these non-canon or these weird side books, I'm not going to adhere to that. So for instance, in what we do next after we finish these three books, we're going to be covering material, superficially and lightly and possibly non-canonically, but stuff that covers all of Warcraft. We're not going to just make ourselves stick to the timeline. That's only going to be for the strict lore. But yeah, by Quel'Thalas as well, and the Ghostlands. They are Alliance, although why the heck couldn't they be Horde too? Who the heck cares? They have Elven blood. They can be any favored class, just like a human. Oh, here's half Night Elves. Only 4 years have passed since the Horde and the Alliance joined forces with the Night Elves to repel the attack on Nordrassil. That's why it wouldn't make sense for the timeline. As such, Night Elves and humans have not found sufficient time to mingle and produce adult offspring. But nowadays, you could argue by dragonflight, you could have that. This does not mean that half Night Elves cannot exist, but they would be far rarer than a typical breed of half elf. Yeah, you could also, like, make some, say, okay, humans, a rare human explorer has met up. Like, it would just be a unique person. They look more like Night Elves, and here's some stats. Half-blood elves, since the Blood Elves came into existence only 4 years ago. Yeah, so these would straight up not exist. It just doesn't make sense. And really, what's the difference between a Blood Elf and a High Elf anymore? There isn't really. It doesn't mean that it can't happen if you set your campaign in the future. Limited Shadow Meld. So this would be a limited Shadow Meld power if you decided to make a half Night Elf. Yeah, so you basically get like Shadow Meld Light. And here are the vital statistics for age, aging effects, and height and weight. Okay, that's it. So next time we're going to get into the classes and then the prestige classes. Those will be a little longer. But we've got 1 chapter down, 9 to go. But we know it's going to be more than 9 episodes because of the nature of the history and the lore. But another episode in the pipe, 5x5. Hey, thank you everybody so much for watching and for listening. And I'll see you next time on Lore of Warcraft.